Everybody, it's Friday. It's Player Profiler. It's Player Profiler today. This is the sixth episode in the 8-part series in which I am previewing all of the divisions in football in the NFL. And I'm doing it in alphabetical order. Today is the NFC South because we did the AFC South last week. Next week, we're doing the AFC West. That's my division. So if you haven't already, go ahead and like and subscribe. I'll give you a second to do that. Hit the bell so you're notified whenever Player Profiler News is on the air. And leave some comments. Follow me on Twitter at BigBonedFFB. Follow Player Profiler News on Twitter at profiler_NFL and find our archive at playerprofiler.com/news. Okay, we're getting ready for the show. I have two really special guests to introduce, so pop some corn, crack open a sparkly beverage, and settle in. Let's get this thing started. No intro video today. With me today is Rhett Manuel and Rhett Manuel. Why? Rhett Manuel.
I'm here. What's up, man?
And BoodaCheese.
What's up? What's up?
I got two Saints fans in the building, which I'm okay with because I am a Derek Carr stan for life. And so we're going to talk some NFC North. I got some news to get to, but real quickly, Rhett, go ahead and let everybody know what you do, where you write for, and how they can find you on Twitter and such.
All right. First off, two spots you can find my articles. I'm at Fantasy and Frames doing a podcast on Wednesday nights at 9 Eastern with my boy Drew Scott and Nate Markham called Fourth and Frames. That is our weekly fantasy football flagship show over there. We're also in the midst of our division previews. We actually have the NFC South coming up this Wednesday. And then you can also catch me writing articles there and for Last Word on Sports, where I just wrapped up a series about analytics and players that are being underdrafted using stable metrics, trying to find people some advantages over there. So that's how I'm rocking, man. Just getting ready to start a new school year as well.
Fantastic. And I am absolutely expecting an invite for the AFC West preview. Washing backs and everything. And Buddha, where are you at?
You can find me on Twitter or TikTok at BoodaCheese. Every Tuesday and Friday, I do a live TikTok show with a guy named Texas Pete where we go over NFL, college football, all that. It's at 5:30. It's called First and 12 Ounces, the name of the show. And, we actually supposed to do it tonight, but I was so excited to be here. I had to take a vacation day from that and join y'all. So here we are.
Texas Pete is a very underrated hot sauce. It's not as good as Louisiana Red Dot, but it's close. I like it a lot.
I wish they would jump on board.
What's that?
I wish they would jump on board with our show, but
that would be a good advertisement. Okay, let's get to some injury news. We got Roman Wilson carted off the practice field due to an ankle injury the other day. He was a third rounder. He was running a jet sweep and went down. He was starting to flash in camp, and the Steelers are currently looking for anybody to fill in their wide receiver 2 spot. They got Roman Wilson. They have Calvin Austin. They have Van Jefferson, and so they're kind of scrambling around without Deontay Johnson. George Pickens is the dude there. Moving to Cleveland, we got Deontay Foreman hospitalized after Browns practice. That's always a scary thing. He was immobilized, carted off the field, and eventually left practice in an ambulance. Never want to hear that. Soon after, the Browns organization released a statement saying he sustained a direct blow to the head that resulted in neck pain. He was taken to a medical center in Roanoke, Virginia for assessment, has movement in all extremities, and apparently he's doing okay. In fantasy-related injury news, we have Justin Herbert dealing with plantar fasciitis. He looks like he's going to be in a walking boot for the next couple weeks. He was diagnosed with a plantar fascia injury in his right foot. He's coming off his second consecutive season with diminished production from his outstanding rookie year, and he will miss the next 2 weeks of the preseason. The Chargers announced that Herbert will be in a walking boot for 2 weeks before working back to full strength, but should be ready for week 1. He came out of the gate strong as a rookie with over 5,000 yards passing in 2021, added 38 touchdowns. His yards and touchdowns have decreased each year since then, and a new coaching staff that likely won't call for 670 passing attempts doesn't suggest a return to his 2021 production this year either. And his injury means he has less time on the field to develop rapport with his new receivers, DJ Chark, rookies Ladd McConkey, and Brendan Rice. And he has to learn a new offense under Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh. He's currently the QB 17 on Player Profiler. He has an underdog ADP of 134, so just into the 13th round. And he's ending last season early because of injury and starting 2024 with another. Plus, the new offense and personnel make Herbert a risk at ADP, but hint at a future buy low candidacy. So keep your eye on that. More injuries. And we just got through the Hall of Fame game, you guys. We're not even playing real football yet, and DeAndre Hopkins is out. He's expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks with knee injury. MCL sprain, week 1 status is in question during practice Thursday, and he's expected to miss 4 to 6 weeks, like I said. He was an integral part of the Titans' passing game offense in 2023, although they did go out and get Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd to back up wide receiver 1, Treylon Burks, woo, pig suey, and 2022 fifth-round pick Kyle Phillips in uncertain territory. I'm sorry if I gave you guys some boot PSD on that one. All right, and then we have contract news. Tua Tagovailoa agrees to terms on 4-year, $212.4 million extension. $165 million guaranteed, and it's a pretty lucrative deal, $53.1 million per season. Jordan Love, $220 million extension, so just above that. After waiting in the shadows of Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love finally got his chance to prove himself. He took advantage of his lone season as a starter, Love finishing 7th in passing yards, 2nd in passing touchdowns, only threw 11 interceptions, finished ninth in QBR. But more importantly, he kicked the crap out of the Cowboys in the playoffs. So they have another Hall of Famer on their hands? And now in Saints-related news, backup quarterback Jake Haener is dealing with a health issue. He has skin cancer. He's trying to figure out whether or not he's going to have surgery before the season or go through treatment to fix that. Now, we know that Derek Carr has struggled behind that New Orleans Saints offensive line, and they did bring in their rookie draft pick, Spencer Rattler, who I've never been high on. What do you guys think about this Saints backup quarterback situation? Are you okay with Rattler? Did you already have him pegged ahead of Haener? Haener, my Fresno State shout out NorCal guy. What is the status of behind Derek Carr? We'll start with Rhett.
No, I'm just going to go ahead and say that I was already, in terms of the depth chart, I already thought Rattler was going to be in front of Haener. And, I mean, he started to come out in camp already, and there are guys like Chris Olave, wide receiver 1 in that room, raving on his arm talent, raving on highest grass in the offense and all these different things. And when you look at a guy who kind of needs a little bit more athleticism because of that Clint Kubiak offense, that San Francisco offense, it can take on a few different iterations. It can be play action based, but you know what? These guys also find a little bit of mobility there as well. So, I mean, Rattler was always ahead of him for me. I don't think he's any threat to Derek Carr, obviously. But, I mean, it's good to know that you have a nice little upside piece that you got in the 5th round of the NFL draft, just sitting right there in your back pocket.
All right. Buddha, what do you think about Jake Haener?
I like Jake. I think Jake's a career backup where I look at Rattler, and I think Rattler's a starter at some point. I think Jake is just your prototypical, and I think he's going to be the backup. I think if he's healthy, he would come in if Carr were to get hurt, if Haener's back healthy. But I do think they view him through the lens of he's a career backup guy where Rattler can push for the starter at some point.
Typical Saints fans buying the rookie draft steam. Sorry, I'm kidding. All right. We have no depth chart updates this week, and so we will get straight into this NFC South preview. I'm going to pay a bill real quick before that, and let's hear from our intrepid leader, Mr. Matt Kelly. Go.
Hey, you're in your fantasy draft and someone says, hey, that guy's injury prone. I don't want him. And you're like, I don't know. I don't think you can predict injuries. Well, guess what? Now you can! Injury proneness is real! At Player Profiler, we have the data on these players, and it's all in the Injury Finder app. Their injury track record back through time, exactly where they were injured, how severe it is. We look at the BMI data, and we crunch it all together, and we give you probabilities that a player will miss multiple games this NFL season, as well as the complete database of NFL injuries and the ability to compare two players and look at their injury track record. The Injury Finder is powerful, and it's only $5. If it's worth it to have that peace of mind when you're drafting, go get it.
All right, let's start with the Buccaneers because, like I said, we're going in alphabetical order. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. Let's get that little boop. All right, we're talking about the Buccaneers. We got a little screenshot of Baker Mayfield. Last season, the Buccaneers finished 9-8. They were first in the NFC South division and earned themselves a playoff spot behind head coach Todd Bowles. They were 20th in points scored, 20th out of 32 teams, 348 points, 20.5 points per game. They were 7th in defense, so defense outplaying the offense, 325 points allowed, 19.1 points per game, 7th out of 32 teams. And based on their point differential, they had an expected win-loss total of 9.2 and 7.8. So they actually won 20% of a game due to luck, but it didn't affect their schedule. They made it to the playoffs. They won in the wild card division 32-9. They upset the Philadelphia Eagles. Although, can you call it an upset? Everybody saw the demise of the Eagles coming. And then they lost to the Lions 31-23 in the divisional round. All right, they had some subtractions to their roster. Dave Canales, their quarterback whisperer that resurrected Baker Mayfield's career, he left the building. They also lost Shaquille Barrett, Carlton Davis, Dee Delaney, and Cam Gill on defense, Ryan Jensen on offense, Patrick Laird, shout out Cal Bears, Cal and former New Orleans Saint, California Golden Bear legend, and former New Orleans Saint Patrick Laird, Nick Leverett, wide receiver David Moore, cornerback Quandre Mosley, Logan Steinberg, Aaron Stinney, Devin Tompkins, and linebacker Devin White. They added Liam Cohen. He's the offensive coordinator now. He was a former offensive coordinator with the Rams and at the University of Kentucky. He was a run and pass coordinator, and they added offensive lineman Ben Bredeson, defensive lineman Ernest Brown, Randy Gregory, edge rusher, Bryce Hall at cornerback, Lawrence Metz at offensive line, Sua Opeta, Sterling Shepard at wide receiver, Tavier Thomas at cornerback, Cody Thompson at wide receiver, and Jordan Whitehead. So, what do you guys think about the exit of Dave Canales? I know he stays in the division, but how much did he contribute to the Buccaneers' offense last year, do you think? And keeping in mind, they were 20th out of 32 teams in scoring. We'll start with Buddha.
I think more than anything, I think Baker is the reason their offense had any sort of success. Kind of getting just maybe a little ahead of myself. I think the NFC South is full of what I call bucket quarterbacks, where you just toss them all in a bucket, pull one out, and they all give you about the same thing. And I think Baker's the best version of that. I think Baker's going to be okay, and I think they're going to be about the same on offense.
like a bucket of beers. Rhett, what do you think about the loss of Dave Canales?
You know, as much as I love Buddha coming in with that confidence, man, I think that you look at what Dave Canales did for Geno Smith 2 years ago, and you see the regression that Geno Smith had last year, where he wasn't nearly the same sort of quarterback he was under Dave Canales' tutelage. Now, was he still efficient? Absolutely. So is it within the realm of possibilities that Baker Mayfield can be efficient this year? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, we're talking about what their offense scored, somewhere around 21 points per game. And I hear you loud and clear on that. But, I mean, pre-Dave Canales, and you could even go back to the year before with the Rams, where there was a little bit of a renaissance going on there too. I mean, I'm on a wait-and-see approach with Baker Mayfield in terms of whether he's going to be the same guy he was last year to this year. But I do agree on the bucket quarterback statement, where you have four guys we're kind of on a pretty even playing field, and I think Baker probably has the most upside this season. So
he also has that rushing upside, which can extend plays and everything. Of course, so does Bryce Young. We got two pocket quarterbacks and two quarterbacks with at least a little bit of mobility. I do like the signing of Liam Cohen. He was with the Rams for a little while. He knows, he comes from that. Now you can say Sean McVay coaching tree, but that coaching tree goes all the way back to the Washington football team that shall not be named, including a lot of guys that we're talking about 49ers coaching tree, and we'll get into that in a little bit with the Saints. But he comes from that kind of philosophy, and I think it's a pretty good pickup for the Buccaneers. The other thing is, if you look at Baker Mayfield, the year that he spent in Los Angeles, he came out and he did pretty good on like a limited knowledge of their playbook and everything. They put him in a place to succeed. So if you had completely put blinders on and evaluated Baker Mayfield for 2023 with his 2022 performance with the Rams, then you could have seen a breakout coming, but I don't think a lot of people did that. The other thing is the loss of Devin White. I think he's been just such a stalwart in that defense. I think that might contribute to a little bit of a downfall for the defense. Although they did bring in Randy Gregory, I don't know how much he's going to be able to get to the quarterback. But so I have slides that I always forget. All right, and then let's look at the Buccaneers draft. They drafted a tackle in the first round with the 26th pick. Graham Barton out of Duke. Then they went Chris Braswell out of Alabama, who has been highly touted. Safety Tyke Smith out of Georgia. My guy, Jalen McMillan out of Washington. Bucky Irving out of Oregon. And Elijah Klein out of UTEP. And they finished it off with Devin Culp, tight end out of Washington. I love the pegging two guys out of that Ryan Grubb offense in Washington, and especially Jalen McMillan. I was really high on McMillan coming out into the 2023 season. I wrote an article that was basically a versus article of him versus Rome Odunze, because the year before, 2022, McMillan led that Washington offense in receiving yards and touchdowns, and that was with Rome Odunze and Jalen Polk, a top 10 pick and a second round pick in the same wide receiver room. So that draft is pretty okay. So when looking forward to the 2024 season, I gave him a little Lord Christmas. So you're telling me there's a chance. And we'll get into the our predictions in a little bit, but I do kind of like the draft. Did you guys did the Buccaneers draft kind of give you bad feelings, or were you okay with it?
I mean, if I'm looking at the draft, I look at Graham Barton. He's a first-round prospect. He's a tackle that has a lot of upside. Plays in the ACC, which, if you know about us boys down south, I mean, if it ain't the SEC, we tend to kind of downgrade it a little bit. But the league saw a lot of good things on the tape. So you know what? I'm going to trust people that are paid much better than me to make these evaluations and say that he's probably going to be a pretty solid dude, and I wouldn't want to see him in a back alley. But I digress. Jalen McMillan, I agree with you. He's apparently turning some heads at camp. I was big heading into the offseason thinking Trey Palmer might have a shot to take that third wide receiver chair. Looks like it's McMillan's job to lose now, and he looks like he's doing some good things in camp. Not sure how much of an upside that third wide receiver role has this year, considering they plan on using Chris Godwin a lot more in the slot. But,
Right.
Nonetheless, if you have a guy that comes in year one and he gets 65 to 70 targets, then there's a chance for some year two upside with him in fantasy terms. And if you have a guy who is a good 65 to 70 target third wide receiver, then he's really good for football terms. So, like that pick a lot.
Yeah, and how about you, Buddha? Did it scare you?
I don't know if scared would be the right word, but I would say that I think the Braswell pick is a really good pick, right?
Right.
Like, obviously, you're going to lose a little bit of quarterback pressure losing Devin White. Braswell gets after the quarterback. He did it really successful at Alabama. He's a good pick. I don't think he fills the shoes that Devin White leaves, but that's a sneaky, really good pick. I like Braswell a lot. I was high on him when he was at Bama.
So did you guys ever see that there was a documentary, I want to say it was on ESPN, and it was about St. Francis Academy, which this old high school football coach went and started this academy to compete against other kind of prep schools, and they followed the season for basically Chris Braswell's senior season. And basically what he was doing was going and he was taking guys that weren't heavily recruited and kind of pulling them up into, they were playing, like traveling across the country, playing against some of the top rated prep schools that were out there. Braswell was a highlight of that show. And because of that, and knowing that he was one of the few guys that actually did get some Division I run from that team, I followed his career through Alabama, so it was kind of cool to see him go as a second rounder. Having learned his story and everything when he was in high school, it was pretty cool. All right, so there's a chance for the Buccaneers to repeat. I'm not so sold. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. And now we're on to the Falcons. We got a little Bijan action there. All right. Falcons in 2023 finished with a 7-10 record. They were third in the NFC South division. They were 26th in offense, 18th in defense. Not a good year, and their expected win-loss total based on their point differential was 7-10, so they didn't do much. But it did mean a foot in the butt for Arthur Smith. Get out, Dave Ragone. You're gone. Ryan Nielsen, take your talents to Jacksonville or wherever he went. They lost Jonnu Smith. He went to the Dolphins. Jeff Okudah, who's the ultimate first-round faceplant. Mac Hollins, Matt Hennessy, Cordarrelle Patterson to the Steelers, and Desmond Ridder. Not really much to lose on that Falcons roster. It feels like it was addition by subtraction to a certain extent. They added head coach Raheem Morris coming over from the Rams. I was kind of high on him for the Las Vegas job before they hired Josh McDaniels. Zach Robinson comes over with Raheem Morris from the Rams to take over the offensive coordinator duties. And Jimmy Lake, former Rams assistant head coach, also comes over to take over as defensive coordinator. They added quarterback Kirk Cousins. That's a game changer. Wide receiver Darnell Mooney, tight end Charlie Werner, offensive lineman Storm Norton, Rondale Moore in a trade, and Ray McLeod to do some kick returning. That Kirk Cousins deal, that's going to be I think the biggest difference. The offense revamping with a new coordinator and a new head coach and getting out from under Arthur Smith's or Dave Ragone, really, his coordination, and then bringing in Kirk Cousins. I think that's going to be a big difference for the Falcons. What do you guys think?
You can go
Sorry.
right.
I'm going to go ahead and say this. It's very clear they had a vision of where they were going with this hire this offseason. I mean, you hire the Rams defensive coordinator, you hire a Rams assistant to coach the offense, you hire another Rams assistant to coach the defense, and you kind of see the blueprint that they're following, right? You see these free agent signings. You see a guy like Charlie Warner, who is a tight end two of not much value. However, if they plan on running Bijan Robinson like they say they are, then they're running a lot more 12 personnel, and all of a sudden a solid blocking tight end like Charlie Warner holds a lot of value. You have Kirk Cousins, who, of course, is a massive upgrade at the quarterback position. This was a team that I saw last season and thought they were honestly, as cliche as it may sound, I know Matt Kelly loves his cliche alert, they were a quarterback away at that point. And I think heading into this season, knowing that they were a pretty decent defensive team last year, knowing that the big bad wolf, Arthur Smith, is out of town, I personally see them as division favorite this season, and that hurts me to say as a Saints fan, because you know where we are about them Falcons, man. All
right, Buddha, what are your thoughts on Kirk Cousins coming over?
Well, first off, I want to say thanks to Rhett, because it might have been impossible for me to say that. So I'll just say I agree with what he says. That way it doesn't have to come out of my mouth. I think Kirk Cousins, like we said, that Baker may have the best ceiling in the quarter. I think Kirk's got the best floor. Like, I think you know what you're going to get. it is a little. We use the word scared for the Bucks. This one does kind of scare me a little bit because that they really elevated there. I think they're going to be. I think they're going to be okay. I think they're going to be significantly better than they were.
Okay, so you see kind of like a Houston Texans style turnaround. D'Amico Ryans, Raheem Morris, kind of similar. Like maybe they make the playoffs. You think?
I think they're in the mix for sure.
Let's not spoil it. All right, in the draft, they went ahead and surprised the entire world.
Oh, this was so bad.
by taking Michael Penix with the 8th
Or
pick.
on different sides.
I think that they weren't 100% about Kirk Cousins' health, and he surprised them. I think there was some stuff that was not. I'm not saying they were being shady. I'm just saying that his health was a concern to the Falcons front office, and that concern was not shared with the rest of the press or the NFL world or whatever. And I think that's why they made that deal and got Penix. I don't think that a completely healthy cousin, say he had come over without the you guys got some Chris B started with who dat and now he's bite your tongue, Rhett. But I'm saying if Kirk Cousins had come over and he was 100% after 2023, I don't think they make that Michael Penix draft pick. All right, this one kills me. So their second round pick was a defensive lineman out of Clemson. Should we leave it there, or should I try Rook Ororo?
Bless you.
All right, Braylon Trice out of Washington. A lot of kids coming out of that Huskies program, runner-ups, national champion runners-up. Defensive lineman Brandon Dorlius out of Oregon. Linebacker J.D. Bertrand out of Notre Dame. Can't ever go wrong with Notre Dame. Jace McClellan, running back from Alabama. Wide receiver Casey Washington from Illinois. Zion Logue from Georgia. I don't know much, and I mean I'm a fantasy guy, and I play IDP too, so I get pretty deep in the draft, and they picked some guys that I have never heard of, and that makes me feel weird because Sean McVay always did the same thing. So I think their scouting departments are pretty similar. All right, so looking forward to 2024, I gave him the cable guy. A dude is annoying. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't. So all of the little things in the thumbnails, it's all Jim Carrey roles. Just so you know. So the first one. And this one is the dude from the cable guy and I picked him for the Falcons because he's annoying and he's not going to go away. And I feel like you guys feel the same way about the Falcons. So even though, viewers, we did not discuss beforehand what my little pictures were going to be, I feel like we all nailed the same thing. The Falcons are going to be annoying. There's a possibility there, and they're not going to go away. All right, we got one more before it's time to talk. And we're talking about the Panthers. Last year, I should push a button, huh? There we go. And there's Bryce Young, and there's a ball on the ground. So that kind of sums up the Panthers season, right? Okay, 2-15. They finished last in the division, fourth in the NFC South. Frank Reich did not do well. 31st in points for, 29th in points against. They actually lost a game and a half based on point differential from their expected win-loss total. They were expected to win 3.5 games, and they only won 2. That signals to me terrible coaching. They lost Frank Reich, Thomas Brown. Not a whole lot of subtractions on their roster. Frankie Louvu's gone, Yetur Gross-Matos, and Jeremy Chin, the safety, who he was nice for a couple years before he started dealing with injuries. And then additions. The aforementioned Dave Canales comes over as the offensive coordinator with Brad Idzik. And they kept defensive coordinator and UC Davis legend Ejiro Evero. They added Jadeveon Clowney, Robert Hunt, Damian Lewis, who's fantastic on billions, but I don't know about his football play. Ashawn Robinson, Josie Jewell, who's a nice linebacker came over from Denver, and DJ Wonham. They didn't do much, right? Like, that's not a lot of free agency work. Like, that's not. Are they even trying?
Good question.
Okay, so similar vibes. Like, all right.
Yeah.
In the draft, they drafted Xavier Leggett, who is a favorite of a lot of people. Then running back Jonathan Brooks. So they were really trying to revamp that offense. Trevin Wallace out of Kentucky, Jatavion Sanders out of Texas. That's a wide receiver, running back, and tight end in their first 4 picks. That if that doesn't signal offensive overhaul, I don't know what does. Cornerback Chow Smith-Wade out of Washington State, defensive lineman Jaden Crumedy from Mississippi State, and linebacker Michael Barrett out of Michigan. And, of course, they get the Riddler because they are a complete riddle. Are they going to compete, get closer to 500, have a huge, bounce back with Dave Canales at the reins and, Bryce Young with his tutelage? We talked about Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, what Dave Canales did for them. In fantasy, I'm really high on Bryce Young just because of his value. He's going after Will Levis in startup drafts and redraft leagues. And I'm like, you guys remember, he was the former first pick overall and was on a Frank Reich team. Plus he has Deontay Johnson now, and I missed that. They got Deontay Johnson too. How did I miss that? And Adam Thielen's still there. They added to the offense. It's obviously they want to do more on offense. So is it going to be enough? Are they a complete pretender? We'll start with Buddha.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not high on Bryce Young at all. I wasn't high on him coming out. I thought he did the one thing when I look at college quarterbacks coming in and it transitioned. He wasn't good against the pressure, right? And he struggled, and he didn't play extremely well away from home when he was in college, and that translated. I don't see him ever panning out. I think they're going to be better this year. It's going to be hard to be worse. But when I say better, I think they might get to 4 or 5 wins. But I think that's about what I think they are. And I think the free agent signings, it feels like you got the crumbs that were left over. Deontay Johnson's a nice ad. Thielen, nice ad. But there's nothing that was wow, blew you away, like a real difference maker. So I've got them kind of still being the bottom of just not very good.
Yeah, that free agency period, you wonder what a team is thinking. They're coming off 2 wins, and they didn't even have a draft pick to supplement that. Because their previous regime had just completely crapped the bed. What do you think of the Panthers this year, Rhett?
Yeah, it's going to be hard for them to be worse. I completely agree with that. I think 5 to 6 wins is probably the ceiling. But we're talking about what they didn't get in free agency. You missed a couple key signings that they had. They upgraded that interior offensive line in a big way in signing Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt at the left and right guard positions.
Right.
Yeah, and then you have the second-year guy, Ike Ekwonu, and Taylor Moton, who is a good right tackle, and they've got the makings of a pretty decent offensive line over there to block for Jonathan Brooks and Chuba Hubbard. Deontay Johnson, for fantasy purposes, is easing into 140 targets this season. Bryce Young is a guy, like you said, I'm buying because of his value. I've never seen a first overall pick, even as bad as he was last year, lose value in the eyes of the public so quickly.
Right.
I don't think the book is quite written on him yet. I do disagree there. But like we said, the Canales hire was a let's fix Bryce Young hire. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah, and I was very skeptical about Bryce Young. I was absolutely higher on C.J. Stroud, and I have the receipts to prove it. But Frank Reich, for some reason, he liked Bryce Young's demeanor in interviews and stuff like that, thought he was the guy. But what I saw at Alabama reminded me a lot of Johnny Manziel. Take the snap, run around for a little while, chuck the ball down the field or run with it. And the chucking the ball down the field was panicky. It wasn't measured. It wasn't like Jaden Daniels where he had a couple looks and then he'd escape a little bit and then find somebody deep. it was more like hope somebody's down there. And that's how he made his big plays. He didn't do a lot of the kind of like the little work, the Brock Purdy style, let's march. And so I was pretty skeptical. Plus he's small for a quarterback. But again, in fantasy at value, I love it, especially with the fact that they're focusing on improving the team in that aspect. So I'm a little bit higher on the Panthers, and more to be revealed later. But let's hear from Matt Kelly one more time.
Now, I know many of you are looking for a secret weapon for your Dynasty League, and I have it. It's called the Dynasty Dominator app. You go to the App Store, go to Google Play. It's right there. It's $5 to download, and then every year it's $5 to load the next incoming class of rookies. You can add Superflex, add tight end premium. It's incredible because it allows you to look up players. It allows you to vote on whether a player is a buy, hold, or sell, and then see the market sentiment on that player. And you can compare their lifetime value rating from Player Profiler to their Dynasty ADP at the FFPC, all in the price lookup tool. And beyond that, we have a trade analyzer, so you'll never lose another Dynasty trade again. And in our settings, you can set this is a win now team, this is a rebuilding team, and then we let you compare players. Look at their metrics side by side, prospect metrics, NFL metrics. It's all there. It's $5 in the App Store. There's some add-ons for Superflex and to buy the upcoming rookie class. Every year, you're going to spend $5 on this thing, and it's going to be well worth it.
His finishes are so good. I just had my home league draft on Saturday. We had our rookie draft, and I had a bunch of picks, but I used the Dominator to completely revamp my team. I went from like my quarterbacks being Sam Howell, Aiden O'Connell, and Jordan Love to Jaden Daniels, Jordan Love, and Dak Prescott. Like, I absolutely resurrected my team, and it was thanks to the Dominator. So if you don't have it and you play Dynasty Fantasy Football, go get it. It's gonna be good, or whatever. All right, now what we've been waiting for, and the reason that I got these guys on the show, because they are fans of the New Orleans Saints. So let's talk about the Saints for a second. I need to push the tile forward. Here we go. Okay, there's my boy. Fresno State legend. Devontae Adams' roommate and best friend. The reason Devontae is a Raider. Derek Carr. All right, recap of the 2023 season. We have the Saints going 9-8, 402 points, scored 23.6 points per game, 9th out of 32 teams, and they only allowed 327, under 20 points per game. I talked about it in these recaps before. 20 points per game seems to be the threshold for a defense. 19.2 points per game allowed, and they finished 8th out of 32. How does a team that's 9th, the top 10 in offense and top 10 in defense, finish 9-8? You guys, go ahead, Rhett.
Dennis Allen.
Ding, ding, ding.
That's what I was thinking too. All right, their expected win-loss total was 10.5 and 6.5, which, again, when I see that differential, I think if it's lower, it's coaching. They lost a game and a half because of Dennis Allen. They had offensive coordinator Pete Carmichael and defensive coordinator Joe Woods. They kept Joe Woods. They got rid of Pete Carmichael. I talked to both of you guys just short of postseason, and both of you guys were very, very not happy with Pete Carmichael and his play calling. And I relayed to you guys spending the season watching on the Octobox or whatever. I watched every Saints game because I was watching Derek Carr and yelling at my screen on every third down, "They're gonna blitz, Derek!" And then he would just be totally overcome, and because the play calling on third down was atrocious. So what do you guys think about Pete Carmichael leaving? And we'll spoil the additions. Clint Kubiak, the passing game coordinator for the San Francisco 49ers. So this is the guy that has schemed up the Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey offense and made Brock Purdy Little hint for you guys playing fantasy football. Brock Purdy last season was number 2 in the NFL in fantasy points per drop back. Clint Kubiak, good addition, you guys?
Love the Kubiak hire. I will say this. I'm not a Mickey Loomis guy in any way, shape, or form. And you're about to hear my passion come out right now because one of my favorite talking points is how bad Mickey Loomis is at his job. So, Mickey Loomis, my man has been playing scared for years. And instead of making the choice that would have been the smart choice and just completely cleaning house, he did the easy thing and got rid of the scapegoat in Pete Carmichael. Now, that being said, I love the Kubiak hire. But now Dennis Allen is out of excuses. They've kicked the can down the road year after year in terms of salary cap stuff. It's a make or break year for Pete Carmichael. There's not the excuse of it being a bad scheme because he's brought in the scheme that everybody's trying to emulate in the NFL.
Right.
So it's a make or break year for Dennis Allen for sure.
Yeah, it reminds me. So on the baseball side of things, it reminds me a lot about the San Francisco Giants. They've been terrible with a terrible roster, and Farhan Zaidi has been the general manager. Gabe Kapler and Kai Correa, his bench coach, were running the team up until the end of 2023. And they have an analytics-based approach. They do a lot of platooning, and they won a lot of games because of their decisions. They were really good, but the roster construction was just awful. So Farhan Zaidi fires them as scapegoats. They're out. He brings in a new manager who's like an old-school baseball guy that wouldn't know what wins above replacement was if it slapped him in the face. And now he's got a great roster, and they're terrible still. So it's the general manager that needs to go, whereas in your case, it's Dennis Allen that needs to go. It also reminds me of the Josh McDaniels getting rid of Derek Carr thing. He should still be the Raiders quarterback. But anyway, we have some subtractions there. Pete Carmichael is gone. Lonnie Johnson is gone. He signed with the Texans. Zach Bond, linebacker, signed with the Eagles. Jameis signed with the Browns. Malcolm Roach, defensive tackle, signed with the Broncos. Isaac Yiadom. Cornerback signed with the 49ers. James Hurst retired. Andrews Pete, now swing tackle with or flex offensive lineman with the Raiders. Ty Summers, linebacker, signed with the Jaguars. Michael Thomas gone, Marcus May gone, Trey Turner gone, Max Garcia gone, Cameron Irving gone, Jimmy Graham gone, former Raiders draft pick Lynn Bowden Jr. gone, Keith Kirkwood gone, Eno Benjamin gone. Sound about right?
A lot happened, yeah.
It's a lot of turnover. All right, they brought in Clint Kubiak, former passing game coordinator for the 49ers. If there's anything that I know about Clint Kubiak, it's that A, he loves 2 wide receiver sets. B, he loves his tight end. C, he loves a pass-catching running back. And F, he loves fullbacks. Xander Horvath, anybody? All right. Xander Horvath comes over as a fullback. Nathan Peterman, brought in and gone already? Didn't they just cut him? Cedric Wilson, wide receiver. Stanley Morgan, junior wide receiver. Shout out Stanley Morgan, NFL legend. Olise Mecca Udo, offensive tackle. Charlie Smith, or Smythe, kicker. Equanimous St. Brown, I can get that one. Wide receiver. Shane Lemieux, it's a very Cajun name. At guard, Justin Herron, guard. Lucas Patrick, guard. Those are some additions on the offensive line. Willie Gay Jr., who is super excited to be on the Saints. Chase Young, who is an absolute force and I think is responsible for the demise of Sam Howell, but that's a different show. Kaliki Hudson, Shamar Jean-Charles, Will Harris, and Kendall Vickers come over as well. What do you guys think about the off-season acquisitions and letting people go that the Saints wound up doing this year?
Start with Rhett. Buddha. I was going to say, let Buddha Roy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Buddha.
So it's hard not to look through it with rose-colored glasses. but it's easier when you got Dennis Allen as the coach to kind of go like, I don't know if I trust all this stuff. I think the Saints got better in the offseason. I really do. Just by adding Kubiak, I think you immediately get better. You put Carr in better positions. You're going to be I think the offense gets better. The defense that's what Dennis Allen does. You're going to defend the pass well. That's what he does. I really liked it. We haven't gotten to it. I liked the draft. I really did. You lost some guys that sucked to lose, but you probably had to lose. Like Jameis comes to mind. That's probably always going to be an all-time favorite of mine just as a guy. But it makes sense why he had to leave. But, again, I think the Saints are going to be better. I like the offseason so far. I haven't loved it. I liked it.
All right. How about you, Rhett? What do you think?
On the offensive side, there was just not a lot that you could hang your hat on and be like, oh, that's a good move. That's a good move. It was a lot of things that said, hey, we don't have a lot of money, and we trust our guys as much as we can on the offensive side, so let's fill in the spots. Equiminius St. Brown, fine. Cedric Wilson, fine. A bunch of dudes that have bounced around the league for a long time and have provided depth pieces, and you hope that one of them sort of emerges and becomes the fourth receiver in that offense, right? Because the top three spots are pretty well set. Defense is where they decided to pretty much spend their money in Chase Young and Willie Gay. Both dudes that I really like as players, especially considering that defense and this roster in general really needs to get younger. So you look at additions in the offseason like a Willie Gay, like a Chase Young, like a Kool-Aid McKinstry. You can kind of see the tea leaves are kind of the writings on the wall there, where they are maybe, perhaps, fingers crossed, slowly but surely starting to turn this roster over and look into the future, because I'm tired of running it back every year and going 7-10 and 9-8 and just not being very competitive while seeming like we're being competitive.
You can't be tired of Cal Golden Bear legend Cameron Jordan. Come on.
I mean, he's good, but he's getting a lot of hands on the waist these days, my man. A lot of hands on the waist.
Long in the tooth. Yeah, and going down this list, like Stanley Morgan, Cedric Wilson, Equinemius St. Brown, they didn't need to add wide receivers anyway. They're just like camp bodies. A.T. Perry, Rashid Shaheed, Chris Olave, like they're set at wide receiver.
I love A.T. Perry.
But
same.
Going down that list, offensive tackle, guard tackle, guard center, like they know that they have a depth issue on the offensive line, especially with Andrews Pete gone, and I know that they knew they had to have something in place for what if something happens to Ryan Ramczyk, and then something happened to Ryan Ramczyk. So I think that they know where the problems are, and they did their best to address them, especially with their first-round pick, Taliese Fuaga from Oregon State. Absolute stud with the 14th pick. Sorry you guys got sniped for Brock Bowers. I know he would have helped you more than Fuaga will, but we had him. Cornerback Kool-Aid McKinstry, who at one point in like one of the first mock drafts that I did for the Raiders, I had Kool-Aid McKinstry going at 13 to the Raiders, but get him in the second round. Quarterback Spencer Rattler out of South Carolina. Bub Means, who's better than all of those wide receivers that we talked about they brought over in the offseason. Jalen Ford out of Texas, linebacker. Defensive interior, defensive tackle Christian Boyd from Northern Iowa. Northern Iowa, not a program that gets a whole lot of press, but they have a guy every once in a while.
Solid FCS program for sure.
Yeah, and Josiah Ezrim out of Eastern Kentucky. Okay. Oh, no. Yeah, there we go. Okay, and the outlook. You guys remember Scott from Anchorman? He was part of the news gang war. He was part of the friendliest Canadian news team, and eventually they died, but that's not what I meant. They're in the fight, which is what I was talking about. I think coming off of a season in which they had the 9th ranked offense and the 8th ranked defense, there's nowhere but up for the Saints. I have, for the biggest riser by wins, you have to go with Carolina. I think They had 2 wins. I think even if they win 6 games, if Carolina goes 6-11, they still win more games. They rise by more games than anybody else in the division. What do you guys think about that?
Agreed.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And then the biggest faller by wins, I have Tampa Bay. What do you guys think?
It gets tough now because I look at these 3 teams and go, they're like bucket teams. We talked about bucket quarterbacks. They feel like bucket teams.
Right, and again, if I'm talking about Carolina rising, it's a very low bar. They only have to win 2 or 3 more games than they did last year, and that's going to be more than the other 3 guys. As far as like falling by losses, I mean, one of those other 3 can lose 2 games, and it's still going to be more than the other 2 guys lost, right? So I have Tampa Bay. I just don't. I think losing Canales hurts. I think losing Devin White as a leader on that defense hurts. I think the Saints did more to address their issues. Plus, they were a better team last year anyway. The Saints were the best team in the division last year, and I have receipts to prove it. They were my pick for Super Bowl champion or NFC champion. I thought they were gonna like come out and just be super, super good, and they were good. They were top 10 in offense and defense. They likely should have only won 11 games, and that was not a great call on my part. But I think they're still the best team in the division. And you guys are, like, you kind of back off on that a little bit because you don't want to sound biased, and you also are, like, closer to the negatives than I am. But looking at it from a 100-yard view, I still like the Saints better than any other team in that division.
Oh, I don't. I'm pessimistic, man. Like I've seen the way this team has been run for years, and I get that Derek Carr is plenty solid. I see Alvin Kamara, who is 29 years old and is going to get the ball probably for 85 catches this year, and if he averages 6 yards a catch again, he's not going to be very efficient. He's not the guy hitting the hole like he used to be, so he's not up 4.5 yard per carry running back anymore. Dennis Allen seems to hate Kendre Miller because he can't stay on the field. Jamal Williams showed last year who he was. He's probably past his best at 2.9 yards per carry. Olave is a very good number 2 receiver, an elite number 2 receiver. I'm not sure he's built to be a number 1 in this league. And to be honest, and you can look at the stats all day and the raw numbers say, yeah, the Saints were pretty good last year on offense and defense. This defense had some sneaky bad moments last year. And I think it's just one of those things where, and I'm saying this with my analyst heart in mind. Of course, I want the Saints to go 17-0. This is a big time regression candidate for me this year. And because I love the Saints as much as I do, probably I'll put it this way: Buda's 2019 with LSU season, which was probably the funnest experience of his life in terms of sporting events. That was my Super Bowl season with the New Orleans Saints. So the Saints are above everything for me. So it hurts my heart to say this, but I have to say it completely objectively. I don't feel good about this squad this year at all.
All right.
I'm kind of in a similar boat. I think, the Saints are really old, so all the names you look at and go, good player, they're a half step slower than they were, if not a full step slower. I get we were top 10 in both categories, but watching every game as intently as I did, that wasn't a top 10 offense, and it may have been I don't think it was a top 15 offense in terms of what I would trust and want, and it might have been a top 10 defense maybe. At times it was really bad. I know you are a big Carr guy. I don't think Carr can get the job done. I don't. I'm not sold on him. I'm higher on him than I was at the end of last year. I just think the Saints right now, I look at a really old team that doesn't have any pizzazz to it, and it just feels like at some point this thing's going to come off the cliff, and it's not going to be pretty, and that could be this year, unfortunately. I'm the same way. I want them to go 17-0, and if we start off 2-0, you won't hear the end of it from me.
Right.
I just, realistically, I look at it, I got a lot of nerves about it.
I'll put it this way from my perspective. we've been doing the restructure, rebuild deals thing every year, trying to run it back and keep the core in place. I'm kind of at a point where there's going to be a year where that stops, where it just won't be feasible to do anymore. And then for me, it's almost like the real fun as a fan is going to begin, because instead of everybody trying to hope that, they can go to the Dome and cheer them on, I mean, you're still going to have 50, 60,000 no matter what, because New Orleans lives for the Saints. The attendance won't be hurt. The ticket prices might be a little lower. And then as a real deal football fan, you kind of look forward to seeing, all right, if they clean house, what would this look like a few years down the road? We've been spoiled for a good long time as the Saints being an above average to pretty good franchise. We're still all bitter about 2018 when they should have gone to the Super Bowl. The no call was a heartbreaker for us. There was Stephon Diggs and the Minneapolis Miracle. Like, all these things have stabbed us in the heart over the past several years. And, it's kind of just, at this point, we had that Super Bowl. We had a couple close calls. Now I'm just like, all right, I want to see a ground up Detroit Lions sort of rebuild and just see what happens from there. Personal opinion.
It's funny because I always talk about having RPTSD, Raiders Post-Traumatic Stress Syndrome. You guys have NO PTSD. And and you also brought up Buddha's 2019 LSU team and your Drew Brees Super Bowl win. I'm going back to 1984, you guys.
I love it. Let's go.
I was 10 years old when the Raiders won the Super Bowl. All right, so I have biggest riser by wins Carolina, biggest faller by wins Tampa Bay, and the playoff teams. I only see one team getting out of this division into the playoffs, and that's the New Orleans Saints. So I want you guys to go back and watch the game tape from the last 4 games of the Raiders 2021 season, and then tell me Derek Carr doesn't have it. not the playoff game, but the last 4 regular season games.
I think you've got a big enough sample size to go. I think it is what it is, right? I think he's Dak Prescott. That's how I look at Derek Carr. I think it's you've got a really big sample size of it in his career, and I think you know what it is. It's better than average, but I don't think it's good enough to get over the top. I think you got what you got.
And he never had the 8th ranked defense in Oakland. Did I miss the Falcons? Haha, sorry I'm late. All right, Shia. Let's rewind a little bit. We got a little bit of time if these guys don't want dinner yet. Okay, their outlook, they're annoying and they're not going to go away. And then we had them. These 2 guys like them a lot more than I do. I like them. I don't think that I think that they're going to finish New Orleans, Atlanta, Tampa Bay, Carolina.
Is this a prediction part of the show? Are we about to get into that?
Well, we didn't have a prediction part of the show. I just wanted to say that that's where they were going to finish in their division because Shia LaBeouf, not the real Shia LaBeouf.
He is, though. He is.
Wait. While we're on the Falcons, I wanted to bring this up. I thought the Penix draft pick, hand up. My initial reaction was to point and laugh. The more I thought about it, the more I liked it. Because, like I said, I think every quarterback in the division is in this group of mediocre to above mediocre. I'm a fan of, if you think he's the guy, go get him. Now, I don't know if Penix is the guy, but I like the thought process of, we got a guy we think is him, let's go get him. So I got to respect it, and I appreciate the vision, and sometimes I wish the Saints had the same type of mentality of, like, just go get the guy you think is the answer.
Yeah, but I'm like the game of the draft, right? One of the guys out of Lafayette, Kevin Foote, talks about the game of the draft all the time, and it goes simply as this. Why get Michael Penix at 9 when you get Michael Penix at 19?
Or in the second round with Jordan Travis. Like, the one thing about Penix for me was I watched him a lot in 2022. And there were a lot of things that I didn't like like he stared down his receivers. He wasn't good with his feet. Like, he did a lot of things that were bad. In 2023, he seemed to fix a lot of that stuff. And it was a very similar story to Bo Nix. Both those guys had a lot of drawbacks. And then 2023 season saw them fix everything and become, like, I don't think they were first round draftable. I just think that's what the QB market was this last year. But for them to go at 8 and 11 or 12 or whatever, it seems so just out of bounds to me. But I like him. Like, I wouldn't have minded if he had fallen into the second round and the Raiders grabbed him and they were like, all right, Aiden, it's you and Penix, like, do your worst. That would have been fine for me.
I don't love him as a player. I like the thought process behind the draft pick. I love the idea of, we know what we got is what we got. It's going to be better. We think this guy's the answer. Go get him. Go get your guy. And if he's not the guy, oh, well, I'd rather you take a shot. Sometimes I feel like the Saints go, we'll do this waiting game and try to play the draft game, and then you always lose the game, it feels like. I'd rather, let's go try to win the game, and if we lose that way, whatever, we probably would have lost it anyway.
Yeah, and the other thing is you have a lot of quarterbacks that ascend at around 30 years old if they weren't, like, for top 10 picks or whatever. And I think Penix is going to be around 30 in a couple years when Kirk Cousins is ready to go. So that's a joke. He's not that old. He's
what, 25?
Close. Something like that. All right. That's our show, everybody. Join me next week as I go over the AFC West. I want to thank BoodaCheese and Rhett Manuel for coming in. Make sure you're subscribed, hit the bell so you'll know when the new episode of Player Profiler Today, Dynasty Stock Market, all of our Player Profiler news shows drop. Like the show, share it around, leave some comments. Thank you to Shia LaBeouf, not the real Shia LaBeouf, and Chris B for jumping into the comments section and interacting and stuff. That always makes the show better. Any of you other people that were watching it, if you could do that next time, that would be great. Follow Player Profiler News on Twitter at profiler_NFL, and find our archive at playerprofiler.com/news. We got a lot of guys on the news desk writing the blurbs that you want to read throughout training camp. We're in the busy season right now. If you think about it this way, every time there's something that pops up on 32 Beat Writers or Adam Schefter or whatever, and they're like, this guy's getting some steam in camp, we've got a guy who's going and writing the blurb that goes to the Player Profiler page and goes into our news archive. So please support us by reading that and all that stuff. And other than that, I will see you guys next week. No, not next week. I will be in Canton, Ohio next week for the Fantasy Football Expo. So I will not have a show next week, but the following Friday I will have the AFC West for me. You can watch also if you'd like, but that episode is really mine, really for me. And other than that, you guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a couple weeks.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.